What's up, everyone? How you doing? Welcome to another edition of Bands You Should Know. So, one of the very first Bands You Should Know videos I did last year was about my favorite UK thrash metal band, Acid Reign. So today, I thought we would talk about my second favorite UK thrash metal band, who are a lesser known band, even though they were signed to a major label and put out some fucking killer shit. That band is called Slammer. So, Slammer. They were formed in 1987, and by 1989, they were already signed to WEA Records, which is technically Warner Brothers Records. And funny enough, they weren't looking for a major label deal. It's just that the really cool indie labels in the UK didn't want anything to do with them. And the weird thing about them getting signed is the fact that there were other great bands. There were other more important bands. But they got signed to Warner Brothers, and I think they were kind of touted as these guys could be the UK Metallica, the band that breaks UK metal. And unfortunately, because of that, I think the UK scene kind of got a little annoyed and didn't really give these guys the shot that I think they should have gotten. But nevertheless, they recorded and released their debut album in 1989. This album, The Work of Idle Hands. This is a killer debut album. It has kind of a classic late 80s thrash metal sound. You could draw comparisons to Testament, maybe a little Metallica. I think that's stretching it. Maybe vocally, it's a little bit like that. But it's just the kind of thrash metal that I love, where it doesn't necessarily rely on speed. It's all about like technicality and riffs, and it's just fucking killer. It's got killer song after killer song, and it's great production by Mark Dodson. Sure, it has like a sort of 80s thrash metal sound like a lot of the albums did at the time, but it stands up with all of those fucking albums from around that time. It's absolutely killer. Let's listen to a little bit of Slammer. Pretty fucking great, right? So yeah, let's take a look at the inner sleeve here. There's the dudes. One dude's like, I'm not even gonna look at the fucking camera. Anyway, so yeah, so there's some lyrics. You have lyric sheets, and like I said, this was a major label release. They well shit. There you go. They had a lot riding on this at the time, as far as I know, but unfortunately, I think the record label kind of wanted it to blow up on its own. I don't think they knew how to market it, knew what to do with it. They were putting them on tours with bands that they didn't really gel with. And so, of course, because they didn't immediately blow up and become Metallica huge, they were dropped by WEA Records. And then they were quickly signed up by Heavy Metal Records, and they released this EP, Insanity Addicts, which is essentially demos that they were doing for their next album before they got dropped from WEA. And honestly, like, all 4 tracks on this EP are fucking great. This is the band kind of branching out a little bit. They're getting a little bit more groovy. They don't feel so stuck in the little thrash metal structure. There's different elements. The songwriting is way better, in my opinion. I think that as the band goes, they progressed in their songwriting. And yeah, the only difference is that, the dry production on it, because it's essentially a demo. But you know what? That doesn't really bother me that much. It still sounds pretty fucking great. Let's listen to a clip.
So this is goodbye. Why didn't it happen sooner? How could I be scared of losing nothing? Nothing. Please don't ask me why. I'm glad that it's all over. Just the happy future I've been missing. What shall we do? Drive each other around the bend, no sliding, screw each other's brains and still deny that it's all true. All my paranoid suspicion, all your laughter and derision, that's a lie.
Great shit. I know, right? And so here's the vinyl. There's no inner sleeve on this one. Heavy Metal Records. They put out a lot of great shit. So yeah, that is the EP Insanity Addicts. And then in 1991, they released their second full-length album, Nightmare Scenario. This is my favorite Slammer album. It's really fucking good. The band continues that progression on where they're adding the groovy elements. There's a stronger bass presence. They got a different bass player on this one, and he is really good. There's a little bit of a progressive element to some of the songs. Songwriting continues to get a lot fucking better. It's just an album that, like, every time I listen to it, I get something else out of it. It's really well done. Let's listen to a little clip from this album. It's just me babbling on. Let's hear some fucking music. So that's the groovy side of it. Now let's hear a little bit of the thrashy side of it. So yeah, you got the best of both worlds. A little bit of grooviness and progressiveness, some thrashiness when you kind of miss it a little bit, it throws it out there for you. Just like all the greatest thrash metal bands, these guys progressed their sound and made a more mature album. And just like on all of their releases, the guitar interplay is fucking great. The vocals are always really good to me. The vocalist sits in that sweet spot that I like. I don't necessarily care for the vocalists that are always like, ah! And then I also don't want the guys who just fucking scream the whole time. I like that sort of middle ground where you're singing when it's appropriate. You might be shouting when it's appropriate. There's gang vocals when appropriate. It's just fucking great. Let's take a look at the vinyl. There's no inner sleeve for this one either. I guess Heavy Metal Records wasn't big on inner sleeves. So there you go. Nothing new. The same fucking label as the other one. So you would think, with an album as fucking good as Nightmare Scenario, these guys should be going places. But no, there were a lot of issues. Apparently there were internal issues. There were disagreements with the record label. And also around that time, once you get into 1992, thrash metal and metal in general were kind of looked down upon, unfortunately. So there really wasn't anywhere to go. So they ended up splitting up, which is the story for a lot of bands around that fucking time. And then, from what I've read, a couple of the members still play music, but they're not interested in doing Slammer again, which it's a little bit of a bummer, but also, if they don't want to do it, I don't want it. You know, I wouldn't want a band just to fucking trot out there and not really feel it to fucking, please some fans like me. I'm fine with the shit they put out because it is fucking quality shit. It's really good. It's unfortunate that it's so overlooked because there are other UK bands that get name dropped way before Slammer, and I guess some of them were around longer, so I guess they have more importance in the UK thrash scene, but Slammer is definitely one that stays up there at the top for me. Like I said, they're my second favorite UK thrash band of all time. And while we're on the subject of UK thrash, book recommendation time. Contract in Blood by Ian Glasper. This is a collection of sort of mini biographies about all kinds of bands that have existed in the UK thrash scene from the early 80s all up to more modern bands. It's very dense. There's a lot in this. To be fair, they could have left out about a dozen bands and maybe expanded on a couple others. But I mean, it talks about all the greats, Acid Rain, Slammer, Zentrix, Onslaught, you name it. The band is probably in here. I highly recommend this read if you're a music dork like me. Anyway, Slammer, a band you should know, and now you do. See you next time.